Discussing putting the agenda together this month, I was speaking with, Mr. Latos, who I would like to once again say thank you, Al, very much, for your assistance in narrowing down the choices narrowing our choices down to two, firms to pick from. We will be, doing that tonight, and, I wanted to give everybody an opportunity before we make our decision to say what they have to say about that now first, when we can have a talk about it, and then we'll be deciding it here directly. But I'll start by saying when I talked with Mr. Busatel, his preference of between the two firms was with Mr. Ramsey from MASB. I for a while thought it was pretty much the material that they both offered was pretty close to flip a coin, for me. But a couple of things that Chuck said, made sense, and other districts that have used them have been happy with them. So I understand, and that was what he had to say to me about it. And so I wanted to make sure to pass that along to the rest of the item. And does anybody else have anything?
Well, I concur with, Chuck. I had the opportunity to talk to some board members from Marysville, which is, nothing
I liked MASP as well. I enjoyed the man's presentation, and I thought that he was a little bit more thorough maybe than the next, and liked some of the examples and things he had to share.
So too, he's been pretty adamant about, he's been in touch 2-3 times in the past month, just to see if there's any more information he could provide. Just real interest in working with Allegan Athletes. He can do some good things for us, and like I said, it's followed up at least 3 times by phone already, so told him we'll relax and we'll get back at him after the meeting, but he seems real excited to work with us, if that means anything to you.
Plus, he's also, had our had a couple of our conferences or seminars that we've had here. He has been doing them, and he's very good. So I don't have a problem with any XP.
Were the prices on those similar?
It was very similar. As I recall from the information that we received, the written information, and they had emailed each of us too, that it was pretty close. So the cost wasn't really, the big difference. It was the other offering. And so what are these people going to do for us? As I'm sure you've all been aware by the email we received from Mr. Bruten. He is elected to not apply for the position at this time. So we will be asking the firm that we hired to find us a new superintendent. My discussions with Mr. Bruten in the past days have been that he is anxious and absolutely willing to be as much help as he can be, and to to us, this board, during this time, during the search period, and of course in the transition from when we hire somebody until it's all finally done, and I appreciate that. And again, I want to thank Mr. Latos for in the meantime, while we weren't sure what Brian's intentions were going to be, for kind of helping us handle this. I really appreciate that. So we had some good talks about it. So, does anybody else have anything else you want to throw in here?
Yeah, Andy, I didn't have the pleasure of giving this the second person input, but I was impressed with the first one. If that helps at all.
No, it does. So it looks like we know what we'll be doing here in a little bit further along. Do you have anything?
So you did a copper something.
Yeah,
You did.
just to reiterate what Andy said,
There
it
wasn't
has been my absolute pleasure to serve as the interim superintendent of the Allegan Community Schools up to this point, and I will be honored to continue to serve as the interim superintendent until such time that you all find the next leader of the Allegan Community Schools. And I've noted in the letter that I sent to you that this is in no way a negative reflection on any aspect of the Algonac Community Schools. It has absolutely nothing to do with the Board of Education, with the community, with the staff. If anything, it is further solidified in my mind that this is a world-class educational institution. The decision is solely based on what I believe is right for my family at this point in time, my career, and also for the Algonac Community Schools as well too. So I very much appreciate the honor, and cannot tell you how much, again, this is further solidified in my mind that this is a wonderful, wonderful educational institution. So I will be honored to serve until such time that the new superintendent is hired, and very much look forward to being active in the process and maybe providing some first-hand information to the skill sets and to some of the traits that I believe that the new leader of the school district should have. Again, a unique perspective afforded me by sitting in the seat for 5 months, and however many months that come on, it should provide a bit of value to the situation if it is sought. So again, appreciate the honor. Very, very impressed with everyone that I've worked with, and humbled as well too. So thank you much. I appreciate that, and I look forward to assisting the schools and finding our next leader. I look forward to working with them in the near future.
Thank you. General fund balance.
I'm gonna take this one.
No,
You were looking
I'm
for me.
looking for you too.
I got you.
No, it's all your turn.
Thank you. At the last board meeting, where the audit was approved, we had discussed setting a fund balance. So I and Lori had a direction to go for, a set number when it's looking at budget cuts for the 14-15 school year. And so Lori has been extremely hard at work over the past 4 weeks, and we've had a lot of sessions of talking about numbers, and we put together a spreadsheet for you that we sent the last Friday letter. And I want to reiterate something to all of you. That spreadsheet is the absolute worst case scenario that we can fathom in our minds, but I think it's important to work from that angle going forward. That spreadsheet and those projections took into account a decrease in enrollment. It took into account not receiving the best practices grant. It took into account many negative adjustments. And so those numbers really are Lori and I's worst case scenario that we can imagine. But those numbers, even though they are being a worst case scenario, show in reality, if you say, Brian, we want you to never get below blank percent, what that truly would mean between this fiscal year and next fiscal year. So in addition to putting those numbers together, the projections from last year's budget, or excuse me, from our current year's budget to next year's budget, and the reductions that would have to occur, we also did a little bit of research in regards to what other districts around us are doing. And very sporadic, not connected. As I pointed out in the Friday letter, East China, Yale, and Port Huron, Yale and Port Huron are about the same. They have 2 months operating costs as their policy. East China is approximately 10% for their fund equity as well too. Most of the emails that we received from these districts said our policy is such and such, but note to self, we're not following at this point in time. And I think that for us, if you're looking for my suggestion and my recommendation, I really would be hesitant to set a firm number and say, Brian, we don't want it to fall below 7.5%. And the reason I say I really don't think a firm number would be appropriate for us at this time is our projections are very fluid and they're constantly changing. And if you tie to a certain number, we may be forced to make cuts that we really don't want to make, when we may be able to prolong and put off some of these cuts of very important programs that we feel are essential, and be able to get ourselves through until such time that funding is starting to come back to us. You know, we put a couple of other caveats in the email for you. In 2 years, we're freeing up approximately $280,000 again because our energy bond payments are over. And $300,000 for the Algonac Community Schools is a significant chunk of money. And again, I would hesitate from shying away and saying 10%, and that's firm and that's rock bottom. Again, if that's what the board's will is, we can do it and we'll get there, but that will force us to make some decisions that we may not be willing to sacrifice right at this moment. So if you were looking for a recommendation to me, I put in that email that I sent to you that I would never, ever, ever in a million years want our district to fall below 5%. It's at that point right now that the Michigan Department of Education is really starting to narrow in on districts, and if you fall below 5%, they're really gonna start taking a look at your books. So that would have been my drop dead point. Would have never let us fall below 5%, but I do think that 7 to 7.5 in good times will be an ideal point. Because again, in Lori and I's best guess when crunching the numbers, at about 7%-ish in that range is where we start to have to borrow money at times in between tax collections to make payroll. And that's not really something that we want to get into long term. So if you were looking for a recommendation to me, I would say that the informal policy would be to have our rock bottom at 5%, but aim to be as close to 7.5 as we are, but that would provide a range for some discretion when we're looking at making some of these cuts going forward. So the numbers have been provided to you, and again, make sure that you know that those are based on absolute worst case scenarios. And as the budget becomes amended as time goes through, those numbers will likely shrink a little bit as well too.
So a range is better than a hard number in your estimate. It would be something that would be more easily attainable. I mean, not to have, not to draw a line in the sand, but to have a general area, a footprint to fall into.
It provides a bit of discretion. It doesn't in these hard times. And again, if you ask me in good times, what would be your ideal? I would say 2 months operating expenses, somewhere in the neighborhood of around 7.5 or 10% would be ideal. But I think the strategy has been for the past 4 or 5 years is we're going to use our fund equity to get us through these difficult times, maintain the program that we have that we know that's essential. And it's, for lack of better terms, it's been raining for a long time. And we're finally at that point where we need to make significant reductions, or within about 2 years, we're going to be out of a fund equity. And we're just not going to let that happen. That's not something that's going to occur in the Algonac Community Schools. And so at what point do we feel safe? Do we have enough capital? Do we have enough fund equity to be able to make ourselves operate where if something does happen, which it does, HVAC systems go, things have to be replaced, are we able to get through? And again, to me, I would never let the district fall below 5%. That's just a personal thing that I have there. I would try and get us as close to 7.5% as possible because, again, I really want to avoid the situation where we're borrowing money to make payroll and paying interest, just to pay interest to be able to make payroll. But having that sliding range would allow us to have a little bit more discretion than if you say it's got to be 1 point this. And when you say that, again, we can do it, we can get there, but I think that discretion is needed at this point in time to be able to preserve certain programs when we know that there are certain lights at the end of the tunnel. I don't know how big they are, but I knew that there's some. And when that money is there in a couple of years, it's very hard to bring things back and operate them at the exact same level that they're operating now after they've been gone for a couple of years. So again, to me, having a bit of discretion in a range would be appropriate at this time. And I think that would allow us to go forward and have a little bit more flexibility in how we're working, but still preserving the bottom line where we are prepared for emergency situations.
And if memory serves me correctly, our policy only is very vague and something
It
like
is.
an appropriate amount or something of that nature, correct?
That's correct. I'm reading the policy, it does not state a specific amount. It just says as appropriate to operate the district. And there's 4 or 5 different caveats in there, but every one of them has a general term that fits in there. And again, ideal would be around 7.5%, but in the numbers that I showed you, 7.5% right now with our projections is about $1.35 million. And cutting $1.35 million out of a approximately $16 million budget, that's very, very, very significant right now. Whereas if we did say 5%, that's in the neighborhood of $920,000. And when you're talking the difference of $400,000, $500,000 there, that's a lot of programming at this point in time. Again, that doesn't mean that I would shoot for the bare minimum. It means that we would try and fall within that range somewhere. Again, knowing that in 2 years, we're going to have $280,000 freed up. And also not knowing what the true numbers are going to be. Again, worst case scenario presented. I would assume we're going to have the best practice money, but again, that's relying on capital from the capital. And that's always something that's up in the air and is never firm.
On the flip side of that, you don't know what expenses are going to
Very true.
probably increase, right? So we're looking at one side saying we might get some additional revenues,
Good.
but our expenses are going to
Sure.
travel upwards too. So
Retirement's
I feel-
always.
I feel a little bit nervous about 5% when the state's knocking on the door saying,
Sure.
what's up? So that's are my concern personally.
So the perhaps appropriate course to take rather than voting on a motion, changing the policy or setting down a cemented thing would be to offer a consensus of the board, in support of a range. For example, if we were going to be in support of a range of between 7.5 and 5, so that you and Lori could be guided by that consensus to build a budget based upon that for the board to approve, that would be the appropriate course to take, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what do we think?
6 to 7.5. If Mike was scared at 5, or has a little uneasiness, and at 5 is where the state is gonna come in and say,
Well, I
we wanna
agree.
look at you, let's not give them that option.
Right.
Let's go from 6 and then go to 7.5, where we'd like to be, and this way we're not having anybody knock on our door.
And does that work for,
Very much so,
does
yeah.
that work?
We can work within that range, yeah. And again, the chart that I gave you is most likely gonna change itself over time. By the time that we get to actually building and presenting the budget to the Board of Education, that number at 6% right now was projected at 1.09. I would very much assume that's gonna be below $1 million when that time comes based on adjustments that we have. But again, as the year goes on and when we do our budget amendments, then that number will short itself down, and again, it'll give us a range that we can start working with. And I've been going out and meeting with parent groups at the elementary, the middle school, and the high school. I've also been hinting at it in the memos that I've been sending out to the community. But once we have this discussion over tonight, I'll be releasing soon via many different publications a series of when I'm gonna go out and talk to the community. And what I'm gonna be talking to the community about is different programs, different cuts, and what those truly mean in dollar senses. And I'll also put out there and say, you know, we have to get ourselves in the range of 6 to 7.5%. This is what it looks like, and this is what it truly costs to do A. And we'll be getting some consensus from the community, from parent groups, from community groups as well too. And that will help provide me with much more knowledge on what our stakeholders believe are essential programs. And so when I'm presenting these to the Board of Education, we'll have that input behind us and be able to have provided for an avenue of input where the community can voice their opinion on essential programs, things that we don't want to touch, things that we want to preserve, and others that may be able to be reduced at this time.
What are the community groups that you are gonna present to?
I'll be talking with the Rotary, I'll be talking with the Community Foundation, I'll also be talking with Lions, and any other group I'll offer it out there that would like to hear. All of the parent groups as well too, every single elementary, the middle school and the high school, the administrators, and I'll also be talking with the staffs as well too.
And if someone in the audience wanted to get a group of parents together, could they come to you and say, we'd like you to present that to us?
Very, very much so. When I do release these times and dates, that is not going to be exclusive to, so if you wanted to come to the Algonac High School Parent Group, I'm sure they would allow you to come, but anyone wants to be a part of the process, they can shoot me an email or give a call, and anytime I'll be happy to do that. And again, when I throw these suggestions out, it's going to be the good, the bad, and the ugly. Please note these suggestions are not, don't take these and say, this is going to be cut. This is just a way for us to show the community that these are suggestions, this is on the table, and this is what something truly costs. And so, again, now that I have guidance, or once you set the guidance, then we have target numbers, and we'll start this process. And probably after the holidays is when we'll start really working on this, so we have a month or 2 months to be able to put this together with a lot of thought.
And at the same time, will give us an opportunity then as a community.
Sure.
To go out and get some funds
Very
for
much so.
different programs.
Very much so.
And we do have some opportunities coming up.
Very good.
So if there's no other objection,
Well,
6 to
I'd just
7.5.
like to ask on Beth, when you say that, and you say there's opportunities from the community, are you talking specifically about the Rotary and the Algonac?
Community Foundation has some stuff going on that we might be able to capture some funds, but we need community involvement in those programs.
Right?
So what Brian's saying is having those meetings and getting what the people think is
Yeah.
important, is even better, because then we can work together as a team to get those funds.
So you had mentioned some of the groups being the Rotary and the other ones. What if there are people out there in the Algonac community that want to be involved with this? Who groups them together?
I'll provide that opportunity again when I put that list out there. I'll probably have a general forum as well too, in addition to the specific groups where anyone can come and provide their feedback. I don't have the specific presentation done yet because we've really been in the infant phases of putting these numbers together, and it's been kind of taxing on us to be able to make these predictions. But the presentation will be done very much in survey style. It'll be a general presentation where the numbers will be laid out flat in black and white for everyone to see. And then there'll be really, for lack of a better term, a laundry list. Here are all the programs that we have and where do you prioritize them, but they'll also have a price tag next to them. You know, what truly does a teacher cost? And people are very emotional about split classrooms. So what does a split classroom cost? What does it save? Those type of things. And when there's price tags next to them, people can be able to rank and prioritize and, you know, what programs do they hold sacred. And once we have that information back, it'll provide much more clarity for us going forward.
So it sounds as though, if I'm not hearing any other objections, that we have a consensus on 6 to 7.5.
I just have a question, just to
Sure.
make sure I'm understanding correctly. It's not a necessity that we write this into this policy, because the policy says something like within reason, so
Right.
we're agreeing that within reason is the 6 to 7%.
So so the course of action we're taking now is Brian was asked for guidance on what do we think that number should be, and without voting to change the policy or voting to say we have to have it at this, we're saying as a consensus, build us a budget that has it within a range of between 6 and 7.5, and now they can do that. And then
Without changing the policy.
without changing anything, they can do that, because then they'll bring us the budget to approve. Based on what we've said, what we.
I'm not gonna bring you something that's below what the will of the board is gonna be. Obviously, if I did, it'd be rejected, go back to the drawing board, but,
What's the problem with putting it into a policy, amending what we have? And putting a range?
Well, the reason it's not there now is because for a number of years, when I first got on this board, they were broke. There was no fund equity. There was like $600,000, and if they didn't get rid of the learning center in Marine City and do a couple other things, that was gonna be done too, and they were gonna be in the hole. And so very shortly after that, the board told Dr. Geiser, that's enough of that, and we're borrowing money to pay the bills at the beginning of the year, which was costing $71,000 a year. That number stuck in my head ever since, because I said at that time, that's a teacher, you know. And the board at that time said, that's enough of that, we want that not to happen anymore, and so fix it. And so over a long period of time, we socked money away, and we had a huge fund equity, and various bargaining groups said, hey, well, you've got all this money, you can kind of do something for us, and Doc kept telling them, no, because someday it's gonna be raining, and that's what we're saving it for. Well, it's a good thing that there was foresight to have that happen, because we're down to the point now where if it was ever it never needed to be changed, because there was always plenty. We purposely saved up plenty. That's why it never was changed in the whole first place.
I understand that part of it, but I don't understand why we couldn't put into our policies about preserving the fund equity to a certain percentage threshold. Why we don't wanna include that in.
Which was the recommendation of the auditor.
You could, I would shy away from saying 6 to 7.5% as a policy, because as we are trying to preserve now, the opposite is also true as well too. When times become a little bit better, I wouldn't want to stop at 7.5%. I want to build that equity a little bit as well higher, and when you're taking other things into consideration, such as future negotiations and things like that, when you're trying to build an equity up to a certain percentage level for, again, hopefully these times never come back around, but they're very few and far between. When it says, well, your policy is only to retain 7.5, and you have 14 or 15 right now, what gives? And that could make things a little bit harder. You know, if it's written in stone, it really wouldn't affect the way that I'm gonna go about certain things, but I would hesitate establishing a range because I wouldn't want to set it as at a minimum because of future ramifications.
Well, and the way I see this, okay, is it's kind of like contract language. It's some contracts are written right down to the brass tacks, and other parts of it are written in generalities. And I believe that this was written in generalities in the spirit of, I believe the spirit and intent of the policy was to, with using words appropriate amount to, those words were used for in the good times and in the bad. It works both ways. And so now that we're in the bad times, and we really have to look at our funds and where this thing is going, and we're down to brass tacks here, that we can do what we're talking about right now and have a consensus to have a budget built for us to approve that fits in the words of our policy and does what we want to do all at the same time. That's why I wouldn't change the policy, because it works in the good times and in the bad. And Brian's coming to us in the bad times and saying, hey, here we are, what do you want to do? And so I think it works.
Ultimately, the budget's gonna come to the board anyway for approval.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. Anything else? Anyone? Okay. Administrative reports.
I have one from Algonac Cal. We just recently found out on Friday that with our outdoor STEM classroom, we raised $2,300 and $2,344 as a community in a school, and Algonac Rotary matched that $2,344, and we just wrote to United Way, and they have matched $6,000, giving us a grand total of $10,644. Where am I? Sorry. We're very, very excited about that. We're looking to hold a meeting in January, end of January, beginning of February, with staff, students, parents, and community members that are willing to come donate their time and their expertise to and start planning. There's so many options for that outdoor STEM classroom and where we want to take it. So we'll look at the planning stages in winter time and hopefully start implementing in spring. So very, very excited there. We also have Science Olympiad parent conferences for today, and our STEM teacher, Mrs. Liberta, I'm not sure if she's here. Oh, she's back there. Has been busy walking around trying to grab parents to get them to coach one of our 16 Science Olympiad events. So first year going into that, and I know all 3 buildings are doing that this year, but big competition in May and getting our kids and parents really excited to see some of the enthusiasm of the parents. We thought we might have to be dragging a few of them with us, come on, you can coach an event, but they seem to be real excited about it. So lots of science stuff going on at the elementary.
How long do you think the money will last you?
$10,000?
Yes.
Oh, not long. It really depends, because with the outdoor STEM classroom, it depends on what we want to get into. I mean, you can purchase small wind turbines to create energy to power certain things if we want to study that. There's solar energy, there's physical science. There's so many different things. It really depends on what the community and the school and the staff, which way they want to take it and how we want to do it. So, the outdoor classroom isn't really a structure at all. It's using the environment out there in our natural surroundings too.
I vote for heat.
Heat outdoors?
Well, heat, wind turbine to heat buildings, and then maybe there'll be some other very even.
So we're excited.
Do you have anything, Val? Do you want to go ahead? A couple of things from behind my blockade here. I wanted to let you know that we have 53 students in enrichment classes at Fairhaven, including yoga bears, not yogi bears, but yoga bears. Sherry Sofair was in paper doing her balloon pose, or some pose, although it was so long summer with 19 kids in there over bent over sewing machines. A picture. Readers Club basketball skills and ho-ho holiday card making. So it's busy after school. We also have, on a more academic note, 56 students in reading intervention services this quarter. Mrs. Duffy just gave me those numbers. Fundraising for our playground improvement projects is progressing rapidly, and maybe not as rapidly as we like, but it's going. Mrs. DeVerney won a $750 grant from Boom last week, and our holiday fundraising was very successful. Our gym was filled with poinsettias and wreaths and kissing balls. So thank you to all the participants.
Anyone else? Okay, board reports? Anyone?
I just, add that along with the consensus, agreement that we have in place, anything that can be done this fiscal year, I know you're working on different initiatives that are certainly, and could help the, fund balances. Appreciate it.
Superintendent's report.
This will be a bit of an abbreviated version, as a lot of the topics have already been discussed, so I'll briefly skirt around a few things. But the first one I wanted to address was the power outages that we had at Algonquin and Millside last week. There were some goods and some bads that came out of that. The bads, obviously, is we missed 2 days of school, and that's unfortunate. If you're gonna look at the optimistic side of things, when we had first talked with DTE, the estimate had been Friday, and so we were fortunate and blessed that the power came back on when it did, and most people were not saying so many nice things about DTE, but we truly do appreciate what they did to get us back online. They definitely shuffled us up on the priority list several times. And the other good that came out of it is this is the first time that we've actually utilized our emergency dialing system in that fashion. Because of the late notification that we had received at about approximately 6:15 in the morning, we activated our emergency dialing system. And if you don't know how that works, if we hit the emergency button, it'll grab as many phone lines as it possibly can. And I think the report was within about 20 minutes, it had contacted 97% of the parents from Millside and from Algonquin Middle School. We did the exact same thing the next day. We weren't as high, I think it was a 95%, but you don't get the percentages when people hang up, but they knew. So at that point in time, we did learn that our emergency dialing system is active, it's working properly, and so we will be utilizing that, hopefully, not very often, but we do know that that infrastructure is there and exists, and hopefully can help add to the many different layers that we try to communicate these emergencies out on. And so glad that that worked, and glad that we had kids back in learning as quickly as we did. I was going to talk a little bit about general fund balance percentages, but that conversation I think is pretty much over at this point in time. I do want to talk a little bit about the Fairhaven Elementary team's visit to the Oxford schools for the purposes of examining the BYP program out there. There's been a lot of, I think, misconception about what the intent of what this visit was, so I wanted to clear this up. When the Board of Education heard about the IB program, this was back in 2008 for Algonac High School, the premise was that we were going to implement this program for a period of 5 years. And then at the end of that 5 years, we would do an internal review and present to the Board of Education, did this program meet the goals that we had set for it? Is it something that the staff was realizing benefit from? Is it something that our students were growing as we expected they were? Is it something that our administrators were benefiting from the feedback from IB? And that review comes next fall. And that review isn't just our internal team, that review is guided by IB. It really does kind of mirror an accreditation visit like we're used to from NCA or from Advanced Ed now as they're called. And part of that recommendation that will come to the board after that review is done next year will be where do we go forward with the Algonac Community Schools and IB? And that can take many different faces. It could say, good job guys, good run, but at this point in time, it's not something that we think realize the goals we set for it. We don't think it's something that we can afford. Or the recommendation can be, we think this was great, wonderful, keep as is. Or it could be great, wonderful, keep as is, not so much, let's expand. And let's strategically do this into the middle school or into the elementary schools. And so in anticipation of this review coming forward, I think that it's of the utmost importance for us to become exposed to primary years programs for the elementary level and middle years programs for the middle school level. So we're making these recommendations based off of a little bit of experience and firsthand knowledge. So we're sending these teams out simply as an exploratory means to help make a recommendation for our IB review committee next year. And so Mrs. Rawlings and team went out to see the primary years program. I questioned my timeline a little bit on that because they came back and were as enthusiastic as I've seen a group of people in a long time. And you always want to harness that enthusiasm right away, but this is not the time. That enthusiasm will then be presented to the review team, and the review team will then add that to the presentation to give to the board after all the diligence has been done to really thoroughly looking at the internal operations of IB over the past 5 years. Now again, we'll come to the board next year. So that was the intent of the Fairhaven PYP visit. And again, you will probably hear some enthusiasm from the Fairhaven Elementary team. That does not mean that we are sending checks off to be authorized by IB. It was just simply a means for us to help enhance our recommendation that will be coming next fall for that one.
Well, I believe you had said it was important because the amount of time that it took from the time the idea showed up to start IB at the high school to actually have it happen was a long period of time.
Yeah.
And having done this part in advance, if we were going to move that direction, we've already got that kind of started.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. It's approximately a 2 to 3 year process. And by having some of these preliminary steps done, if the board at the time of the recommendation would say, yes, this is something that we think that our students need moving forward and we'd like to expand into the elementary realm, then we've already got a check mark or two done and will help put us in a little bit better position where we wouldn't have to wait 3 years to be able to implement something that we think is important for our students. Melissa already addressed this, but I want to make sure that we give some public thanks for the grant that we received, that Melissa received for her outdoor classroom. A public thanks definitely goes to all the community members that helped with the initial fundraising for the project through the Community Foundation giveaway. Thanks definitely go to the Algonac Rotary Club for their generous match, and thanks go to the United Way of St. Clair County for a $6,000 addition to that. The over $10,000 is an absolute blessing for us, and so I want to give a public thanks to all the entities that went into that, and also a thanks as well to Mrs. Engel. Although she won't take credit for this, she was a very big push behind getting a lot of this funding, so thank you to you as well too. We very much appreciate that on behalf of the students of Algonac Gal and all the other students that are going to benefit from this outdoor classroom. It's a wonderful, wonderful addition. And the only other piece that I had in my superintendent's report was expressing gratitude one more time for the opportunity to serve as your interim superintendent. Again, it's been a wonderful opportunity for me, and I look forward to helping serve the board in any way that I possibly can throughout the search process, and I'm very excited to help find the next leader for the Algonac Community Schools. So I want to express my gratitude one more time for the opportunity and let you know that I'm here to help in any way possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Visitors and their requests?
Patty Campbell?
Tonight I'm addressing you as a spokesperson from the Committee for Citizens for a Better Algonac Community Schools. This is an official statement on the recall. The recall started because a group of taxpayers felt like they weren't being heard by the board on the privatization. We wanted the board to slow down and take more time to work with the community, to either find other solutions or to really investigate this contract together to see if it was really going to save us money. We were told that to delay would only hurt us more, and that the $200,000 in savings for the first year could be used now to bring back teachers. If we waited, it could put us under. A few weeks later, that savings would shrink to half at the first clarity hearing. Citizens offered cost-saving solutions, but they all fell on deaf ears as the privatization moved forward. Many times it was claimed that you did listen to us. The problem was that even if you were listening, you really weren't hearing us. There is still nothing that shows any significant savings, yet more lives than we originally imagined have been disrupted due to this. We have even laid off people outside the transportation department as a result of the privatization. When the wording was approved at the second clarity hearing on July 1st, many know we did not even plan on collecting any signatures at that point. After all, by that point, the board had already not listened and voted to sign the contract with Dean. What changed our minds was the fact that there was still resistance from many of the board members on videotaping meetings. Also, having open forum style meetings with the public and getting the agenda out for the meetings earlier. So we pushed on. As the research continued and more things kept popping out of the woodwork, and calls and emails from citizens telling us where to look or supplying us with the needed information they had. I really didn't realize how fed up the community was with our ex-superintendent or the board until I got out in the community knocking on doors. I want to thank every member of the community for the overwhelming support. I would say 95% of the doors I knocked on were in full support and signed the petition. I have heard many stories out there of things that have happened over the years and saw the fear of retaliation in the faces of employees of our district who were in full support but afraid to sign anything. Many people have also feared retaliation for their children, both employees and parents. It is time that this type of administration stops. Anyone who lives in our district should not have any fear of speaking out on anything that concerns them at any time. One mother had me choked up as she was literally in tears that someone was finally standing up to the board and administration. Another took my petition and ran it around to her neighbors before taking her own blankets. The problems in the system did not start with privatization. The privatization just caused more people to see what was going on and to investigate further. There have been small groups over the years who have tried to correct some of the wrongs, but with no videotapings of meetings, many in the community never knew what was going on. This changed as people started to hear of 11 of our drivers and fellow citizens getting their state retirement ripped out from under them for a private company that would supposedly save us $1 million over 5 years. This was a lie, just as many other things were. The first positive change we saw on the board was at the July meeting, when 3 of our board members showed that they did not want to continue doing things the wrong way and voted against the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Baranowski, Mr. Busuttil, who's not here tonight, and Ms. Engel. During the same time period, Artie Bryson offered free use of Clay Township offices to record and broadcast our meetings. After this offer was made, we were suddenly able to record these meetings on our own. Although we are still working out the bugs after 3 meetings to get a recording that people can actually hear on their televisions, but hopefully that will be fixed at this meeting. We also saw the Board of Education policy manual posted electronically on the school site, and the agenda being posted earlier as well. These are both great steps, and the policy manual has a great search on it. I found it very helpful. 6 board members were slated for recall, and the first 2, Tim Itzkowski and Sharon Stiltner's seats, are up for re-election next November. We take the recall very seriously and believe it should only be used when absolutely necessary. With this in mind, and acknowledging that we do think these 2 board members did make some bad decisions, the committee does not find it prudent to cost the district and our children more money with a special election at this time. We will let the voters show their displeasure and lack of faith in these board members at the polls next November, should they decide to run again. Susan Trebilcock's seat is also up for re-election next November, which is why we never did plan on recalling her. With the timing of her appointment and new election laws made it impossible to recall her at all. As for the 3 board members who were in the first year of their 6-year terms and can't be recalled until any time after January 1st of 2014, Mr. Goulet, Mr. Baranowski, and Mr. Bussettel. The committee will continue to monitor things going on in the district, but as I stated earlier, 2 of these board members have already shown us their integrity in the July meeting. Additionally, both of them have stated they are more than willing to work openly with community involvement. The last thing I would like to say is that we and other taxpaying members of this community urge you not to sell our buses to Dean Transportation. You have a community full of people ready and willing to help you find other solutions. You wanted community involvement and interest. You now have it. What each of you do with it is up to you. Thank you.
Anyone else? On the action items, resolution for summer tax collection.
Make a motion to approve the annual summer tax resolution as presented, calling for 100% summer collection of school property taxes in 2014. A copy of the resolution to be provided to the local governing bodies prior to January 1st, 2014. A complete copy of the resolution shall be attached to the original of these minutes.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? This is a resolution that we pass each year. We started doing this, back when Dr. Geiser was here, like, in the mid-90s, as a measure to collect the taxes all at once and then be able to, invest and, have the funds on hand. Anyone else? Not all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Selection of a superintendent search firm. I'll make a motion that the Board of Education approve the selection of the Michigan Association of School Boards, MASB, as a superintendent search firm to assist in the process of hiring a new superintendent of school. It's been moved and supported. Is there any more discussion?
Andy, on that, at this point, I don't know what you guys need me to do. I'll take guidance from the board. If you want me to continue with contact Mr. Ramsey and have him point him to you guys or start corresponding with you through email in terms of how he wants to proceed, or any guidance that you guys have from him, we're more than willing to do whatever you guys.
We should probably also contact Mr. Edwards and let him know that he wasn't selected and thank him for his time. And, let Mr. Ramsey know that, see what his, plan is. Yeah, what should the next step be according, what does he wanna do? And, cause I believe when we were discussing with him, if my memory serves me correctly, that we would, hire him in, November, he would come and talk to us probably in December and start doing stuff in January, correct? That one, if I recall correctly, that's what, so if we let him know, I'm sure we'll be hearing from him.
You bet.
Okay? And thank you again, your help was invaluable, I really appreciate
I'll
it.
let you guys, what they said, I'll get in touch with them this week and let them know, and let the others know as well.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Approval of KSS invoices.
I'd like to request approval from the vote, please, due to a possible conflict of interest.
Okay, I'll make a motion that Susan Treville Cox shall be recused from the vote on this motion due to a possible conflict of interest. It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes.
I'll make a motion that the Board of Education approve the payment to KSS Enterprises of a total amount of $2,709.68 for the purchase of custodial supplies.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Motion to adjourn. Been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Have a good night.